Chris Greer wouldn't have traded Jalen Phillips. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't seem like, that there was such a fire sale by the Dolphins that move had to be made. Unless, again, we all look around and only talk about what we see. You obviously might have more vision on what else was going on behind the scenes in a lot of these places. And let's start with the Dolphins. Was Jaylen Waddle close? Like, why is he still on the Dolphins right now?
I would say, like, we're talking before Chris Greer was let go on Friday. I would say, like, the other 31, the teams that were talking to the Dolphins were really under the impression that there were guardrails on Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, just as far as what they were able to do because of the tenuous future of the franchise. Now, they were open to listening on almost anybody. Like, Jaylen Waddle was kind of a no. I'd say Chop Robinson probably a no, but everyone else they were open for business on. It's just, could you really get a deal to the finish line with Chris Greer's job on the line the way it was? And I would say after Chris Greer was let go on Friday, things opened up a little bit. Right. And I think Champ Kelly had a little bit of freedom, like, hey, like, see what's out there for some of the players on the roster. Jalen Phillips made sense. Of course, he's up after the year, so this is a rental. The chance to get a top 100 draft pick was really, really attractive, when you're in the middle of a lost year. But they easily could have moved Minkah Fitzpatrick if the right trade had come, the right offer had come across the table. I think they would have been open to moving, Bradley Chubb or a Matthew Judon. Like, those sorts of things were definitely in play. I think the two players that were closer to untouchable, I'm not saying anybody's untouchable because we saw with the Jets' actions that everybody's got a price. The two players I think were a little closer to untouchable for them would have been Jaylen Waddle and Chop Robinson.
Okay. Now, did the Steelers and Bills not consider themselves receiver needy? And again, I know the way the fan bases are looking at it. Even if any fan base that thinks they could use a receiver sees Raheem Shaheed go to Seattle and watch Jacoby Myers go to Jacksonville for a grouping of third-day picks, and why did that happen and other places not get anybody, Albert?
So I think, well, first of all, like, one thing I've learned doing this for over 20 years is that everybody thinks their team needs a receiver for a couple of reasons. One, like, it's fun to watch receivers and there's a fantasy football effect there. And two, you can put a lot of them on the field at once. So everybody feels like they could use a better two or yet a better three. It's just sort of the reality of the way people look at this. I'd say in the case of the Steelers, they like the group that they have now. And, I think guys like Calvin Austin and, Roman Wilson, like, were guys that they really like, that they've developed. Austin was somebody that they felt like, really, coming out of last year was ready to take a step forward. DK has been great. And so, like, I just look at where the Steelers are. They still want to be a draft and develop team. And was the juice worth the squeeze with any of those guys where you're going to step in the way of the development of one of your younger guys? You also have the ability there to play with multiple tight ends, which they've got great depth at the tight end position. I'd say the Bills is a little bit different in that, like, I don't think receiver was their top priority. Did they kick tires? Yeah, I mean, they called New Orleans on Olave and Shaheed, and they did their due diligence there. I think if they had made a trade over the last couple of days, the likelihood is it would have been for a defensive tackle. And the reason why is because Ed Oliver got hurt. And Ed Oliver, you could argue, is their most important defensive player. He's injured for the second time. They might get him back. Like, there's hope that they could get him back in the playoffs, but that's no sure thing. And so, I know after the way that they played defensively, the other night, like, the idea was to, like, hey, can we make this sustainable and can we add something there? And I think defensive tackle would have been higher on their list than receiver.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.